podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
Justice Rajee, my brother.
Man, so this week, I mean, we'll just start off. So, we've talked a bit, I think, earlier this year about black men in the election and our central presence, at least in the dominating, at least through some outlets, public conversation. But an interesting occurrence happened, and it deals with, former President Barack Obama, and particularly the way he speaks of black men, but sort of the recurring issue of, which, I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat it. The way at times it's like he's scolding, you know what I mean? Like the scolder in chief, I believe, is the way
scolder in chief.
The Washington Post framed it. And I want to start there. I mean, I think at some point in this discussion, there's a place to go around other folks who trade, or other circumstances where we trade in the sort of scolding dynamic as it pertains to black men. And there's a generational thing, I think, there around that. But let's just start with Barack and his comments, which I guess were at a speech in Pittsburgh, if I'm correct. And I'll let you lead off with a thought, and then I can follow up with some of the things I had to say, particularly about let me just say for the record, the brother's columns in the Washington Post, and it's Paul Butler, and it's a very relevant conversation. So I want to. Yeah, there's no judgment. I guess to start off, I'm not, I guess we want to have the discussion we're going to have. But I wanted to get your thoughts, like, kind of on that piece.
Yeah, man. So it was, I can look back on it now. It was kind of like when them shot heard around the world. It's kind of like, it's like the hip hop, no, not quite to this, because this was big. But it's kind of like if you happen to be at the show where Run DMC pulled off his Adidas and told everybody to put their shoe up. You didn't know he was going to do that. You just happened to be in Madison Square Garden or Uniondale Arena that night. But then next thing you know, you're part of hip hop history. You just going to the concert. In the same way, I think, post-mortem or, a recap of the victory, there's something around what happened last Thursday that will be a part of it. For the Harris Walls campaign, either to say we fixed it and got the black men fast because the ship was sinking, or this exposed it, we didn't fix it, and we turned off too many people too late. That's, again, history we'll see. So, we were given a chance. I was given a chance and some other folks here in the region to get a audience with the former president around black men and voting and talking about this, right? Because this has been out there for a minute, and I know we'll kind of go deeper. So I'll keep it light right now with this, but everyone was obviously looking to meet him because, again, as I've written and said to you, I disagree with the substance of what he was saying and who he was saying it to, but he's the best political orator of a generation. So even though you're listening, it's kind of like a rapper who you don't want to like. Like some people probably feel this way about like a Glorilla. Like, just some people in the world who like, I don't want to like Glorilla, but you like, yeah, Glow. Like, you know, that it was kind of like one of them things. Like, you don't want to rap along with Future when he talks about stuff he doesn't do, but it's kind of interesting. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to listen to, or even like Drake, right? So it's kind of like one of those things. But I will say, you know, the substance of it was not, and we'll talk about this later. The substance of it wasn't like a new conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it wasn't something we haven't heard. I say it was the sharpness of it. The sharpness of his argument was different. Like it wasn't something that people are not saying. It wasn't something that there's not been dialogues about in, you know, in this campaign cycle. But I think it was like the sharpness of going right to like the brothers. I'm speaking to the brothers. Now, I also will note for everybody, it's important to note this. The collection of men who were in this meeting were all professional men, right? These are all men who, by and large, are going to vote, even whatever concerns you have. And I have had some concerns about the Harris Wall platform as far as it pertained to not just black men, but frankly, black people.
Mm-hmm.
However, on the other side of it is a fascist.
Yeah.
Right? Like on the other side of this is not like Mitt Romney.
Right. It's a fascist who has stated
George W. Bush.
Right, without pause, that they intend to use the largesse of the federal bureaucracy to attack their enemies. And people are like,
right.
I mean, he not really gonna do that. Which I'm like, when did we live in a world where we be like, yeah, just say wild stuff that you ain't intending to do, because you know, politics. But anyway,
right. Like I mean, one level and I think history will record, we've allowed him to enlarge in the space of like incredulous behavior, so that it like a rubber band, it never goes back to its original form.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where everyone's like, oh, he wouldn't really do it. But you don't know that, number one. And number two, you shouldn't be allowed to even say that. Like, you know how black folks say, don't play around with me? You shouldn't be allowed to play around.
Right. You should, yeah. Like, you know, it's certain things I feel like if you said it out loud, it suspends disbelief that I'm supposed to be like, oh, he don't mean that though. It's like, no, I'm gonna take your word for it. That's what you're doing. But anyway,
right. So anyway, so it's kind of like, you know, talking to a whole host of men who don't fit into this category about the brothers, air quotes, who fit into a category. Because at one point, you know, someone said, you know, we got to come out for the sister, and the sisters have come out for us in the past, and, you know, kind of using a really a understandable yet somewhat challenging argument in the context of a national election. And I'll say a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and one of the people in the room was like, I'm going to vote for her. And then he went to the whole like, yeah, but Cousin Pookie might not. And the utilization of Cousin Pookie as his othering, as this like the ne'er-do-well in your family. And again, black folks all tell this we all tell this story.
Yeah.
About that.
And
go ahead.
I mean, and just something I want to footnote, it's a pervasive dialogue that many different spaces, even when it's just us, that I find some point in the dialogue, somebody's going to make a reference akin to that. Right. And usually with some level of like, yeah, and you know, what's the name? You know, your cousins is doing this, or my guys that's in the such and such, you know, in some way simultaneously discrediting the space that you're in its legitimacy to make decisions or have its own thought or view of itself, while also kind of making choices about people that aren't in the room that I think are like kind of challenging when you draw it up, you know, to me, you know, just to put a note on that, but like that yeah, and you know, because like all of us are like this, and like the other people, they don't be in rooms like this, and it'd be like, I don't know, might be more people than you think is in rooms like this that is also in that other place that you talk about, wherever that may be. But go on.
Well, but and I will say that was part of the the kind of otherworldly thing about it, because it was like, we're talking about this group of people, like people got to do this. And then one part that they don't show is him talking about, yeah, and I know, like when we get caught up in the system and the system ain't acting right, the sisters show out for us. And then, yeah, and I know that racism is bad and you know, basically white supremacy is white supremacy, but get over it. And I was just like, whoa. Like, and not whoa because black folks don't have to get over it, but I think it's the language of knowing that even if you told me I didn't have to get over it, guess what? I got to get up tomorrow morning and be over it, or at least deal with it. If I don't say get over it, I got to deal with it. So it's something different. And if it was a rounder argument, I know what we're competing with. I know what these things are happening. And then the third thing I would say, you know, was it didn't give any credibility to the fact of, in the last 5 to 6 years, and probably 8 actually, because we can go back, of disinformation and misinformation, not only by the Trump campaigns themselves, but by foreign actors. Right? This isn't, you know, the majestic conspiracy theory hour. We know on record there are foreign actors who are interfering with American presidential campaigns to have people who it's easier for those actors to deal with. I ain't got to name them. You can look it up.
Right.
But so the idea that like black men are just frankly shiftless, or a certain class of black men are just shiftless, versus going back to our conversation about the manosphere, they've been fed steady, and we've all been fed steady diets of disinformation for a long time. And when you disconnect that to the very real and palpable reality of the economic disconnection that many people have, to only put that to the side because you say this person grew up with you, looks like you, and you need to support her. So it was, and again, I don't disagree. I want to state for the record, I don't disagree. The black experience is not monolithic. People show up in a lot of different ways. Black folks ain't always got to be broke. You know what I mean? Black folks ain't always got to be look one way, act one way, talk one way. So I am, for the record, that's not the case I'm saying. But the idea that when you put all those things together, that someone couldn't have any very rational decisions or rational reasons why their vote did not have to be earned. Which touches on me, like, why does, in Israel, why, if we talk, and we've been talking, and J.D. Vance is here because of hillbilly elegy, and we talk about the white working class voter and what you got to do and the union vote, right? And we've dedicated billions of dollars to those conversations. Why would you not have to earn black men's votes? Why would you, to a lesser degree, why would you not have to earn Latino men's votes? In a system that you earn votes. Systems aren't given because that's the brother or the sister. We've been having black elected officials for 100 years now in America. So the idea, and really over 100, I'm saying, going back to Reconstruction, but I'm saying in the modern context.
Like, absolutely.
So there's a context that, like, every time somebody come up that is too big of a decision not to do that, but then we want to say we're not a monolith. Well, we're not a monolith. Don't expect everyone to jump to do a thing if we're not a monolith. If we're voting racial solidarity, then call it that. So that, you know, and the last thing I'll say just quick. So after I left, I went to the barbershop and they was like, yeah, man, what's going on with you? I said, yeah, man, I was just saw Obama. He's like, you was with Obama? You should have came up here. And that was the reality. Yeah. Because the people who have those deep disagreements, They weren't in the room with all of us who had to get ourselves checked. It had to be made sure
Right. You
that
vetted and you gotta do all the stuff before they
we
let you
weren't
come to them
assassins.
joints. Yeah.
It would have literally been in the barbershop, which is what we say he was famous for.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a sidebar for listeners that may not know. If you get invited to something where a current or former president, and depending on how high elected official is going to be at, sometimes they got to like vet you first. You don't just get to show up because various security reasons and stuff. So like people may not recognize that like if Obama come in to talk to people, most of the time somebody got to check stuff out first before they let you be in the room. Whether that's good or bad, that's the reality. Like,
Absolutely.
well,
So yeah, that's just what I mean. So I just want to kind of just basically even me framing it, get your take, and then obviously with the Paul Butler article, the Charles Blow article, and just your broader take.
I mean, I think it's like one of those things, and it is the word that I'm using right now because, like I said, I try to stay true to my value that I don't really want to be like attacking in like wide open beef other black men in America, or like on the internet or wherever, or seen as just antagonistic or anti. Although we exist in a mutual culture of rigorous engagement as it pertains to the things we think and say.
Absolutely.
And therefore I'm not against rigorous engagement on the things that other people think and say, even if they didn't know they signed up for that.
Right.
But it's disappointing, like for him to take that tack, right? So I'm gonna stay there. I'm gonna sit with this for a second, and then my second point on the point that you made around the tactic of it is disappointing because it's like I want to think that we're past this place where we think this is the way to get the battery in somebody's back, right? It's almost like I gotta basically kind of say you a sucker in polite speech, or you don't really care, or I have to shame you, right? Now there's some generational stuff there. There's some stuff there with the like, because I don't know what really motivates you, I'm gonna speak to you about what I think motivates you, right? And sort of the meta idea, the thing that I think other people think will motivate you, right? Because we do.
Right.
I mean, I'm stand by my concept that the comments on the internet are a psyop, whether people know they're engaged or not. Because
That's right.
times the things that you will see and that people will say, almost any issue, you can get the people that's like, well, they just need to work harder and it'll be better. Or these people is always you'll get the people that's positive or trying to have a thoughtful, rigorous engagement with the particulars of nuance of a situation. But you're going to get a lot of the, well, if they just would do X, then this would get to Y. You know what I mean? If this would just do that, if y'all really cared, if you stood up for, if you believed in, if you cared about, right? And that's the way we speak to each other in that venue. There's also the aspect from a generational piece. Again, I would say a message that we of our generation heard to a significant degree growing up in the 80s, that y'all got to get y'all shit together. Even before most of us even started cutting up. Right? That like somehow
Right.
the thing that was going to get to the next level of black people's reality in America was us young men. And I felt like us young men, especially, there was a whole different dynamic put on our sisters that is different and bears a very interesting conversation at a time. Not this time, because I want, other voices to be a part of that dialogue. And also make space for sisters to speak for themselves. You know what I'm saying? Justice ain't gotta be out here being your ambassador, so to speak. But like, if y'all ain't playing around and you do the right things, like our community will be better, right? Either subtext, right, or the main point in a lot of spaces it was not motivational in the just like, I mean, there was a little bit of the, a mind is a terrible thing to waste type of energy, But then a lot of the times the onus of the wasting was on us. Like if your mind was getting wasted, it's because you was out here playing games. You know what I'm saying? You were
Right. Right.
and I ain't saying that all the time. Sometimes that was not wrong, or there's not context where that's not wrong. But I am saying to start there constantly was sort of like, man, if you don't get out my face, they was just selling a crackhead just jumped through somebody's window and destroyed my aunt's car to take because they thought there was some of value in the back seat. I don't really want. I feel like that ain't my fault. You know what I'm saying? Or I'm in a school that is in deplorable condition and ain't been fixed since the 60s. You know what I'm saying? And it's 1984. Like, I don't know if that's a me issue. You know what I'm saying? Or, the very specific destabilization of the kind of, age hierarchy that was experienced with the crack epidemic, you know what I mean, and the concurrent AIDS epidemic and the concurrent Reaganomics that said, oh man, we're going to have these jobs for you. Not really, though. We're going to send your jobs overseas because,
Right.
and trickle down. Eventually, the money will find y'all. And it's like, so all of those things, right? Even while I should say before I lose it, there's you could also mark, some of the largest boosts in, college age, college education going in the Black community across the spectrum, graduation rates, all these other things, despite those problems, also happening. So, which is a wild thing that I don't know if we talk about in the right way. So, saying that to say, but that scolding energy, that if y'all just pull your pants up, do this, do that, and that's been, I would say, I mean, outside of fair human rights criticism that folks also weigh against Barack Obama as a former sitting president, um, in terms of us, that 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 feeling, that drive within him to go to that place constantly, and even while like starting the stuff with like the My Brother's Keeper work and the Obama Foundation and like that this other like side of it that's like trying to center like work and services and programming and connecting and financing resources for folks doing work, serving and trying to change the lives of Black men while also being like as an orator, this like scolder. It's like a weird thing to do because it's like I can look at like, oh, you trying to like, okay, you putting your flag on. My long term legacy is going to be around trying to create some institutional, realities that fund changes in the experience of Black men. Also, though, I'm gonna be like the uncle that comes to the family reunion every year and says all the nieces, all the nephews, y'all need to get y'all shit together. Like no matter how good y'all doing, I'm coming.
Right.
I'm coming to Thanksgiving to be like, it ain't good enough. We'd be like, but he's an electrician and he got his own contractor and he's a lawyer and this one does this and there's 3 teachers and look at the grandkids. Oh, they're so beautiful. Yeah, but you Negroes need to work harder. Back in my day, you know what I'm saying? Like,
But and one cousin or two cousins, because there are systems that conspire to harm people. They got jammed up.
They got jammed right. They in the mix. They, he might be doing. I just came home. Right, might have been on the other side. Might have been engaged in, just getting clean from substance abuse. Right, like these things can be concurrent, and it is not necessarily. It's not fair to make the negative sides of all those outcomes just something that solely resides with the individual, as much as it is also not fair to just be like folks' successes are only a product of their hard work and effort, right? There's the both sides of the nature of a system that produces certain outcomes. But again, I like never losing sight that there are like active actors trying to undermine positive outcomes. I mean, it's cited by, a conversation we had over a couple of years ago about that New York Times article that, that demonstrated how regardless of the economic circumstances of a Black man in America that you came from, you have just as equal an possibility of ending up in the lowest economic bracket to the highest economic bracket, regardless of where you started, right? And this is still an ongoing, unchanged fact, right? And then the piece that I wanted to touch on, and I think so it's like it's just disappointing, right? Like I would want to see some it's like, oh yeah, so this is where it's like he knew saying that to y'all would get out, would be, anywhere he speaks, he's a former president, anywhere he speaks, somebody gonna talk about what he spoke, right? And that then if the thought was, well, from a tactics perspective, this will be a good energy for the campaign for me to go fired up at black men. And I'm like, I don't, with the cacophony of headlines that mostly either speak to like, well, maybe it's slipping with black men or sleeping with black people, slipping that are mostly negative. This doesn't necessarily suddenly make, I don't feel, gonna make somebody be like, oh man, you know what I need to do? I need to let one of these polls know that I'm riding with Kamala, with Kamala. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't, I just it's disappointing in that context too, because it's like he know when he go talk what's gonna happen. People gonna say what he said. They're gonna have opinions about it. It's gonna go in the news cycle. Then people gonna have to comment back on it, and maybe that's his day. Like maybe the other people will do the cleanup work to make it more positive or to add nuance. We talking about it, so I guess maybe he's winning. I don't know, but as it pertains to um that actual motivating factor, it's like the barbershop you went to after, and for them to be like, yeah, man, you should pull up here, right? Would maybe have more impact, even if they went in there and just chewed fat on just to be heard, right? Than saying a whole bunch to like what black men need to do and not need to do.
Absolutely. Like,
I
absolutely.
like if that was the resonating story, is that like, yo, he did this speech, but then the crew, him and the Secret Service just pulled up on like 3 black barbershops and hung out and listened to what brothers had to say. They ain't tell nobody to stop. They say, look, y'all got 30 minutes, give me the business. And he said, we're gonna take what you said, and I'm gonna pull up. I ain't, you know what I mean? Like, what if that happened? Like, how would that resonate? How would I think there's more people that would go, wow, he did that? That's wild. I didn't think he would do that. You know what I'm saying? Where the like, oh, he over there banging on us again. Yeah, man, old dudes always banging on us. You know what I'm saying?
And can I just touch on that really quick? Because I do think I want to recognize why. And I'm not recognizing why in a way because they think it's true. But I want to recognize why people think this in the context of one of age context, like you said, which thank you for bringing up. There's a class context that remains. And then there's a gender context.
Yeah.
So you have the confluence of age, of class, and gender that pop out in this particular conversation. But it goes back to your point that like you want people to cut past age, class, and gender as it pertains to a presidential election, acknowledging one, you've been fed misinformation, and two, that this guy is, he's a fascist and all that. He's also like the Steph Curry of like politics. Like he changed, like Donald Trump made everything different. Like he came and was like, lock him up, but then he was like, abortion. He's like, no, I'm not down with abortion. Right? Like he would say one thing that you totally accept a Republican to say, and then over here kind of be like, no, I'm not down with that. Yeah. No, I'm not doing that. And people are like, I've been seeing him on TV. He was rich. He says whatever he wants to say. Plus, he's not down with abortion, but he does want to lock people up in a material number of, especially the Latino population who has been in America for some time, shares some of those sentiments. Now, just like in the black community, we got some of them conversations like we're talking about. You got some bugs in the Latino population like, yeah, man, put that wall up there, man. They don't work hard enough.
Oh yeah,
right? Like
they got the same thing where you might think it's one way and it's not a monolith.
Yeah, not a monolith. They're not a monolith. So you got this confusing political thing. And so instead of recognizing the landscape, you put it all on, to your point, how you are not being good enough for the black woman, how you are not being good enough for the black race. And that's the deeper concerning thing to me. And talking to a not small number of women, because actually I was really having to process this. And this larger feeling, especially in the context of our dialogue about the manosphere, how there is a relationship between how like some Black women are seeing the through line between Vice President Harris and stump stuff in our own communities. And I'm not, like, to your point, I'm not here to say you're incorrect. And I rationally can follow the through line, because the through line looks like I won't support her because she's a woman. And I also, the site, like you said, the psyops are like Black men don't want Black women. Right? Black men want to travel to the Dominican Republic, which women who also are of the Afro-Latino diaspora, so we should cut this out. Like, but so we have this through line that's so wild that I could understand why people are saying it. But again, we're not having, like, we end up trying to have a Black community relationship in a presidential context.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to have a Black community conversation, then we need to have some town halls about that.
Right.
Not you're not voting for this person, or you're thinking about withholding your interest when, again, the same larger population of Latino men are at least seen, quote unquote, on the fence. And we're not even talking about the amount of white men who specifically will just be like, listen, I don't care.
70% of white men who vote Republican, approximately, give or take some numbers, for decades, all the time, regardless who they put up there. Make it make sense why we talking about me.
Right.
In the national media, you know what I'm saying? It's not I know why, because they have also established the idea that talking about us antagonizes us. It will further alienate us from listening to what you have to say, which is, as the height of privilege. Be like, oh, we don't get to critique you. Y'all be wilding. All right, let me move on before I cut somebody out. You know what I'm saying? Like it's this dialogue that it's like we're not really talking. Like we're not having a substantive engagement with each other. We're not like modeling the idea that, like, well, what's the even some of the different articles that have tried to do this framing are like, well, to me, they've tried to be like, here are the Black, and again, it's always Black folks. I don't know, there's other people. Here are the Black Trump voters or the Black undecideds and like what they think. And it's weird to even read some of those pieces, because then, I'm reading them and then like they're saying the stuff that why they're going the way they're voting. I'm like, well, that's a ridiculous reason. But then I'm trying to be kind because I don't know what they said in total, right? It's the article, they took the salient point that they saw, right? But then also is maybe not productive for me to be like, I think what you said is your reason is silly, because that's probably not going to make you change your mind. Right? Like what would actually get into maybe moving you politically would be a deeper discussion about what we're talking about you actually want. Right? Which is not what we typically do. We don't always have a dialogue about right now around where we go, I'm upset. Here's the thing that I want. And then someone goes, that's a good thing to want. Is the way where you're trying to get it to get done the right place, which, I acknowledge, the nature of power and structure in society is sort of like, just because it's the wrong door for me to go yell at don't mean that I shouldn't yell at this door. But
right.
But it also is a thing at some point to go that someone had to say, I might be with you. I actually can't do that at this building. But where I think they can do that is over there. Like, let's us go together over there and talk to them about that, right? But that, that is complicated stuff for, a good article around polls and leading the nightly news line. It's more dynamic, I think, or maybe it moves faster to go do the other thing. So
it's really quick too. I think this is where the Charles Blow article comes in, and we've talked about his book, Fire Next Time. and his, I think, provocative stances on Black folks moving to the South, and what those things mean, and so I think as a political writer and a thinker, I think he's good, and he's someone that I follow and listen to and read rather, and I think his article, his response to President Obama, while not being like Paul Butler, was kind of making a point that, yes, patriarchy sometimes does trump race, but not in the ways that we always think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Like that there are some people who believe a set of things that, again, confound the traditional concept of how people show up.
Yeah.
Right? There are some people who have their own perspectives in the abortion conversation. Right? The conversation around reproductive health,
Mm-hmm.
The conversation on reproductive health and reproductive services. There are people who have their own take on it. I don't a lot of them agree with them, but I don't act like it's not a position.
Yeah.
There are people who have a position on tariffs and trade and what they think will keep American jobs. And I think it's important for people to put this in context. The Biden-Harris administration worked to make it really difficult for other countries' products to come into this country to make sure that America made stuff, and has spent billions of dollars to say America should make stuff and other people can't make stuff.
Yeah.
It has a less fascist look on it. It is not fascist. It is economic. It is economic nationalism.
Yeah.
So whether you call it Trump's stuff or the Biden administration is like, we're going to build semiconductor chips in America. But we ain't built semiconductor chips in America for a long time. And there's a whole world, if anyone ever wants to, we can do this in person, ever wants to talk about the complexities of industrial policy, doing something in America you ain't never done. And then trying to be equitable, doing something in America that you've never done or haven't done in a generation, shall we say.
Yeah, yeah. Especially after you've basically subsidized it to be done in another country to offload,
right?
To cut the costs and to offload the environmental, consequences of the level of, at a time when basically we've seen definitely the greatest spike in semiconductor need in the history of humans. You basically spent 20 years telling somebody else to build them, and we'll put them in stuff and sell it. And then be like, wait a minute. That's what we're doing. Just so everybody knows.
So it's just like, yeah. So just when we're having this conversation, there may be people who have a different position. There may be people who feel like there is not enough attention on small businesses and more of an attention on kind of venture capital. There may be people for whatever their reasons are into crypto and are into different forms because it's not as regulated.
Mm-hmm.
And they want, they want to take a ride on the wild side. So instead of, for all this time, those voices were treated like it wasn't a conversation, regardless if you agree with it or not. It was a conversation, and then within 4 days, the Harris-Walz campaign puts out a position on all of this.
Yeah.
And again, whenever they responded. I'm not into this too little, too late. I mean, again, history will record if it was too little, too late. They responded, and this is my particular perspective, not my job's perspective. So I'll say it from that point. The other side has not come up with policies that are specific to the economic mobility of Black men. Yeah. So one campaign did and one campaign didn't. So that's just what that is. That's not I like somebody more. It's just one person did and one person
reality.
didn't.
What's on the deck is one has not actually presented any. They haven't even presented the concept of a plan. They just said that they're gonna do some stuff, or
You'll be better with me because
you'll
they
be
hate you,
better,
right?
but they
Like,
they give you nothing yet.
but we can't say that if people had those set of feelings, that's not relevant. Just like acknowledging there are people who feel a certain way about public safety, even though, as you've built about, at least when it comes to murders and certain violent crimes, by all accounts, those are down, right?
Yeah,
Now, from this is again my perspective. I think we all see too much because we have a culture of what do they call it when you can see it when we're all watching each other, hypervigilance and hyper. We have like a hypervigilant culture. We have a culture now where we just see each other's actions all the time. Like the idea now that you can use your camera to film anybody, like you go to anybody's house, there's a camera outside that is taping what is going on outside their house at all times that can be accessed by anybody.
yeah. That you can. I can turn. I reluctantly got a security system when I ran for public office. I have cameras outside my house when I'm hundreds of miles away. I can look at the camera and see if somebody is on my, somebody left a package on the front. I can see. I can scroll back and see the video. If somebody walks by just taking their morning walk, I get a doo-doo. Somebody's walking by the garage. Somebody's walking by the front door, right? Every day. So, whether they want to be a part of my video archive or not.
They are. We're in a culture of hypervigilance, right? And what's the term when people run you just people got cameras on you, but whatever. Like, and so we just see so much more than we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Which my perspective plays into our pervasive fear of public safety because we're just seeing it. We're seeing everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So go ahead.
Well, I'll just say by, probably unpopular justice. No one likes to be that no one likes it to be implied that they may not really know what they're talking about, even if they don't really know what they're talking about, because it's something they feel. And then so if I go, but that's not the truth. They're like, no, what you mean, Justice? That's the truth, because I feel it. They're like, possibly, could be. I ain't saying you're wrong. I'm just not saying you're right. Right? Which is like, Justice, how dare you? And then I'm like, look, man, I'm trying to get to the other world, man. I'm trying to get to that next world, man, where we do the thing where okay, yeah, you're right. Let me show you. So I go, is this the room where I'm allowed to tell people and the people got to listen to what I got to say? Or is this the room where I got to go like, well, that's a good point you brought up.
Even if it isn't.
Even if it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, it like the dialogue, though. Just I want to add on to what where I think some of the things you were saying around us is like, instead of having a space where the person feels like their perspective on what is or isn't happening to them has been heard by folks who are saying they're going to work on those things. So even if whatever you decide to do maybe doesn't totally move the needle in the way that I think I want, knowing that you actually took my perspective seriously means something. Right? Like, it's as opposed to feeling like I'm just not even involved or I'm not even invited to be involved. You know what I'm saying? Like, the only time you talk about me is when, again, you need me to do a thing. But when I'm feeling, left out, you don't have much rap for me. It's into the something in the Charles and Blow piece, and then where he ends in the piece, I think is the really important thing, that like the feeling that what you're doing is more like masculine, more manly, even if it ain't a good thing, right? Which to me, I translate into, from my work working with people over the last 2 decades, when people feel agency in whatever they're participating in, even if it ain't good, They got agency, and that's much more important than approval. Because we would like it to be the other way around, so to speak, right? It's like, nah, but this is what I feel. This is what I want to do. And then you'd be like, yeah, but that may not be a good thing, right? If I don't trust you, if I don't have a relationship with you, I don't have some level. I think that you have a credible interest in what's happening with me. I'm gonna take most people are gonna take their agency every time over whether or not whatever criticism, feedback, pushback to the actions they want to take. Um, advice, even if you just like somebody tell you, yeah, man, I want to do this kind of community event. Right. And you and somebody that's done some community events, maybe ask a question to be like, maybe having live tigers in small cages is not a great idea with small children. Right. They'd be like, but the tigers, that's our spirit, that's our animal. That's our mascot. We gotta have tigers. And you're like, yeah, but tigers are like predators and they're big and they probably are really expensive to bring to Homewood for a festival. Maybe we get signs of tigers, right? Like, it's could be considered a trivial point, but if that person feels very strongly, they got to have them live tigers in the cage. You know what I'm saying? Like Big Meech, you know what I'm saying? But
Big Meech. Yeah, I say just as a genius. He didn't wove Big Meech into this conversation. Just as a genius, man.
Like, I need to have them. We need to bring the tigers in. The kids gonna go crazy, and you like, yeah, brother, let's go raise the cost of the insurance and everything else to do this great community event by like $70,000-$80,000, where you could just get some fly art of tigers, and we could do everything else, right? We could do all the other services to get the kids and the celebrating the community and the love of the right. But somebody might be like, but I need them tigers, bro. You know what I'm saying? And then if you transmute that level of like, I want to do the thing that's on my heart. I want to do the thing that I'm really engaged about. And whenever in my own life, right, just something I want to do, but in being companion and with others, it is something to be respected that you gotta, if you can navigate how you can tell that, have that engagement with the person to go, you can still get to this thing that you want to see happen, but this aspect may not be, this or that. But you can't do that though if we ain't actually in dialogue. You can't do that. You definitely can't suddenly do that at the crux of a election process that is filled with all these other, voices and inputs. But I think it's a very important conversation around, like, to the degree whether it's appropriate or not to like masculinize, feminize what is or isn't masculine or feminine in the public sphere in this particular, in like a political operations context, or the danger in that, or the, I don't know, my general sense that, there's reasonable outcome. Like there's the way to do deliberative process to make a decision about something that you should do that doesn't require a gendered expression. But, that's something else for another, everybody don't agree with justice as it pertains to that. But also I acknowledge when it's that another point that he kind of elevated, like the idea that like racism, the different ways someone could respond, like Obama it is dialogue based said like, yeah, like, racism, because he references the in the Butler piece, Obama speaking at Morehouse in 2013 and kind of saying like, yeah, like racism out there, but you're going to do what you need to do anyway. Like racism can't be the excuse why you're not successful, right?
What he said, exactly what he said, yeah.
Right. So you got that, and then you got folks who would like opposite tack would kind of be like, well, they racist, so you got to do what you got to do anyway, right? Like I've seen both, or I mean, I'm sure I would think I've not had a real live. Have I? No, I haven't. I would say I'm not going to speculate too wildly, but I'll say nothing that the counter argument as stated is sort of like the idea that like, yeah, they might be racist, but all of them are. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, what really picking? Like, what am I really picking against? As I managed, I think I might have shared with you there was a recent interview I listened to of a musical artist, and some things were stated in the interview, and I'm just for out of respect to everyone involved, because I don't want to cast no aspersions yet. But there's some silly stuff was starting to get said, and I was trying to hope that the persons would stop talking to them about that, so I wouldn't have to be like, man, they over there thinking silly stuff. But it was a lot of it was stuff that's on this same track though, around like, what are some of the causative challenges that Black folks face, right? Is saying, even if I may feel the sentiment that, like, well, I don't think my life has materially changed much no matter who's president, so therefore I'm not gonna be involved at all, or I'm not sure, because I don't know enough about her, you know that or like that sentiment may be real, but it doesn't mean that I got to be like, yeah, that's a reason that I would agree with you to not participate. Is a reason though I can understand where you're at right around the election. It's a place where all right, well, that's interesting. Tell me more. Let me tell you what I think. Here's, because then it gets to how do you engage with the political apparatus, right? For some folks, it may be a more clear transactional desire. I want this, and this to happen. For some folks, it may be more of a moral, like this is an articulation of my moral values and the who I think I am in the world by who I decide to vote for. It may be some whole other set of things. But I think that the agency piece, I think, is where it always comes back to, and especially when it comes to us, that we are not. I should probably shut my mouth, because I get mad texts every day since I've donated money here and there to various things about, donate more money to this, donate to that. This person's race, this other person's race. We got to move the thing and do. And I'll be like, man, I mean, I wanted attention, but I ain't want disattention. Like, somebody just talk to me about what I think. I don't got that much money to kick around, right? Where for other people, they be like, text messages. You got text messages? You know what I'm saying? And if I'm,
Right.
opposite me, I'd be like, what you talking about? Just people send you text messages about what you think, right? And it's hard sometimes to think about what's the world when you're not being pursued, for your opinion.
And not being asked. I mean, this cuts to like so much in the idea of like Asher Oldhead and the Good Brothers, because this really just cuts. I mean, I think you're pointing around agency and acceptance. To touch on that is like one real thing. Like, we talk about the idea of shame being a way that you can get people to do something, but news alert. There's a set of people out here whose shame is not an effective thing to compel them to activity. And you might have ran into the set of crew of people in this particular situation that don't work. Number one. And that there's a lot of, again, we can have a Black people town hall about why that don't work no more. The other thing is this idea that I've been sitting with around apathy.
Mm-hmm.
I heard, I'm paraphrasing the quote because the person said it much more artfully than I'm about to, but it basically said that disconnection creates either anger or apathy, and both are incredibly expensive.
Mm.
Right? Yeah. And so when you have people who are disconnected, again, we have talked about the white working class, the white males who are disconnected, don't feel like they got a place in society, not an origin story of what you think, why that is, and where it comes from. That's where you can have a divergence, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we paid material attention to that role, and how it has caused anger in certain sets of people. It's caused sadness, and it's caused apathy. If you've been disconnected for generations, little idea of hope. The concept that you will continue to get over your apathy to perform an act once every 4 years is laughable. Yeah. Like, it is. I'm going to say it's laughable to think over time. I'm not talking about one time where the resilience kicks in and, the near and present danger, right? I'm talking about over generations of being told, people saying that your vote doesn't matter. This is not true. But even the conversation, if someone does not have a very nuanced conversation about the electoral college, right? You can come away with some real creepy feelings about it because of how it functions.
Yeah.
Now, again, that's not that, the idea because of the weird way that it functions like a bank. You don't not put your money in a bank because the weird way that your money's not there at night. You don't stop putting your money in a bank, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's for everybody, your money's not there at night.
Right.
There's fractional banking system. They've given it to other people.
They might find out.
Yeah, my bad. But
shut us down, brother. Shut us down.
I got a letter from the government the other day. My fault, y'all. Anyway, FDIC, my fault. FDIC is working perfectly fine. Don't worry. But but seriously, yes, the fact that it's a weird system doesn't mean you shouldn't participate. But the idea that the apathy can be compelled on demand and that you're less of a tribute to your race, less of a tribute to your relationships, less of a tribute to loving your mother, loving your cousins.
Right.
Just intellectually, that's a dangerous, dangerous slope. And I'm saying that not just for this context, but for the context of broader participation in all forms of American society that, again, don't give birth to this either anger, which you see played out in certain ways, or apathy, which not are just expensive to America. I actually think they're more expensive to the Black community. Mm-hmm. And we have to be okay and willing to have these conversations when no one's running for office.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's, to me, it's a way that this orientation that we have to this engagement. And in a way, again, like we are primarily like if you're not involved in politics, and local civic outcomes, either if you're not really involved at all, it is often this sort of like they come to town every couple years and ask you to do some stuff. And then there's this other, I think one of the other beats. It's probably there's many places people can be positioned. It's sort of the like I'm real into maybe local like school board or the city council. You know what I'm saying, or the county or whatever, depending on where you live in America and how power is distributed, where that's at. But then I don't state government. I have no idea. You know what I'm saying? Like you may not be in the mix on your state politics. Or you just, it's only something that comes up again, kind of like in this major way. There's like big national elections that get lots of news coverage. And so therefore you tune in. But day to day, it's not something that you are, invested in. And then there's also the beat where folks are like, they're invested in the distress about all of this stuff. Right. So you come in and you in the barbershop arguments or the Facebook group, rant or the various social media platform things, and something happens and man, we got to do, and the people and the so and I don't. But then you ain't you there for the argument and everybody venting, but like the part where somebody's like, all right, man, well we're gonna have another meeting next week. Talk about what we're gonna do on Colbert Street. Like, you may not be at that Colbert Street conversation because you was upset, and that's why you had to say something. But now you like, oh, I gotta go, gotta go do my taxes, or I gotta go clean my house, or I gotta go to work, like whatever the other thing that that takes a lot of your time and energy for you to, get through your days and do the things you need to do takes, becomes primary. And it doesn't mean that you don't care at all. It's just how you're currently situated. It is not the place where you spend time until it raises to a certain bar. And I think that to me is the thing. Those folks, which is a lot of us, I would say, because people got a lot going on, that I feel most concerned when you have sort of this negative shaming type of energy, because it's like you might have just peeped your head up over the horizon to see what's going on because something got to you, and then if this is the message that pushed you away before, you're gonna go right back where you was at. Because it's like, man, I went up there. They was up there telling us we wasn't about nothing again. So I don't even want to go to that. You know what I mean? And it's a very, it's a fraught dialogue. But it is I think that the quote paraphrased in terms of the cost of all of this is so high. You know what I mean? When we get into the dialogue around like, well, not just if things have in fact not changed or not changed in any substantial way, the why is somewhere between that anger and apathy. And so we have an incentive to figure that out as I see it. Yeah, I mean,
absolutely. No, I'm 120%, man. 120%.
So, saying that, I'm saying I need to tell when I get a shot, I get a chance, I'm like, Brock, man, you stop banging on brothers, man. I know you love this stuff. I think maybe mostly, but you got, what I mean, invite the brothers in, man. Say, hey, man, when we get some of them beers you and Skip Skates got with the cop, a couple of them brews, pass that around the room, man. Let's chop it up. You know what I mean? It's,
I just want to say, I think a lot of us, and in a positive, I want to say something that's going to sound stark, but be positive. That like I think a lot of the appeals to racial solidarity, the appeals to cultural solidarity, need to be rooted in building community. Like we have to build community before, when we had a lot of that, when it was hardcore racial solidarity, cultural solidarity, there were a lot of elements to that. We lived in neighborhoods, we interacted with each other, we built community, right? I think and we've talked about this, as community has become virtual, as community has become less important in the centrality of, and I'm going to just speak for Black people's lives, but I think you could argue this in American life, there are repercussions to that.
Yeah.
We have to be able to build community. We have to reinforce community. And sometimes that means we have to actually be in physical proximity. And we have to do things with people in physical proximity to show grace, care, and concern. And I think I'm going to be positive and say, if we learn from this, is we have to learn to be in community with any group that you want to be supportive and take nobody for granted.
Yeah. Well stated. I think that's there's a good place to wrap up. I think you hit that. So, only other thing I say is, hey man, if wherever you at, make sure you're on the voter rolls if you're gonna vote, because they be playing games out here some of these places. And,
the time is near.
Yeah.
Do it now.
Right, do it now, right now. You probably
right now.
I know our ballots just went in the mail yesterday. So I think you got a couple more days if something didn't go right for you to go and make sure you registered. So yeah, man. Other than that, we'll be back at some time soon, and I say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, I'm Majestic. Good Brothers is a part of the Ask Your Oldhead podcast, and you can support the podcast by rating and subscribing wherever you listen, sharing, and you can become a patron on Patreon. Just search Justice Rajee and subscribe, and you help me make this happen. Also, you can support the podcast by hitting the Etsy shop or the shop button, purchasing a sweatshirt or a t-shirt. Every little bit helps. So in any event, please take the best part for yourself. Thank you. Peace.